Hello, my name is Vance Millen. I helped create this set for the Mundelein Kirk Players. I wanted to show you a little bit about how we did it. First, we created this kind of standard base that a lot of theaters use. It's a wood base. You see it's a bunch of 2x4s. We had to tack it to the ground with some screws so that this whole thing wouldn't fall over, so be careful to do that to keep things safe. We got these cardboard concrete form tubes. They were pretty cheap. As you can see, we cut them off at sort of odd angles so that they weren't straight. We wanted things to look kind of malformed and natural. If you have too many straight lines, it just doesn't look very realistic. So we got increasingly smaller concrete forms and some other kind of carpet tubes and basically stuck them over our 2x4s that were placed at odd angles and screwed in nice and tight. Then we bought a big roll of brown butcher paper type stuff. We bought a thick roll and a thin roll, which I rolled out probably into about 30-foot long sections, and I had people stomp on them and wrinkle them and twist them and turn them and tear them just a little bit. Then we left these kind of hanging roots at the bottom of the tree and spun them up. Once again, we tried not to be too orderly about it. We spun them to the right, we spun them to the left, we made some C curves in there, and we always left roots hanging off the bottom, and we left a bunch of paper hanging off the top so we could wrap it around the tree branches as we got higher and higher. Then we got a bunch of old tree branches, jammed them down into these pipes here. We forked them out in all different angles. Once we got enough of them, we brought that paper up around and sort of curled it around the branches. Before I put the spray foam in, I wrapped each tree with some twine, which I removed shortly thereafter. The twine held the paper together in a nice form and gave it some weird bulges and shapes. Then I took about, maybe 3 or 4 cans of spray foam, which I got also at the hardware store for about $4 each, and sprayed it into a bunch of the crevices and holes. This kind of helped hold the paper together almost like a giant super glue ball and made a gnarled looking bark-like structure all around the tree. It also looked kind of like lichens and things like that. Here you see we started to put some layers of paint onto these trees. We have sort of a bluish paint, a reddish paint, and some white highlights. I jammed some dark paint down into the crevices and underneath where some shadows might be. So when you stand back, it actually looks pretty cool. It has a lot of three-dimensionality to it, which I really was pleased with. I also left the tops of the trees, kind of where the bark meets those little branches, a bit frayed and torn up and abstract, and kind of wadded it up a little bit and put a bunch of wet paint into it and smashed it and smeared it and created kind of like a paper pulp that spread out all over. It was really cool looking, I thought. So the trees looked great as silhouettes, so if you can do some backlighting on them, that creates a really nice effect. You could put a lot more branches in if you wanted to and make them look not quite so stubbly. We also used the same technique to create our stumps. We had about 7 stumps that the actors could pull around with some ropes that we put in there in the beginning as handles. I used the same technique, put the paper a little thicker in the middle of the square and a little thinner towards the corners of the squares, wrapped it with twine, put a whole bunch of spray foam in there. Then just as quickly as I could, I jammed about 3 or 4 different colors of paint into it and created some streaks that looked like dark spots and light spots. I created a circle effect where the trunks had been sawed off, and we had some pretty cool looking stumps that were light enough for the young kids to carry around. We also used that same paper, wrinkled it quite a bit less, to create these sort of rocks that we then speckled with splashes of water off of a paintbrush. Dark specks, light specks. And so we were able to create a pretty awesome looking set for a very low budget. I don't think the whole thing probably cost us maybe $400 or $500 at the most. So those are my suggestions for how you can make some cool looking trees that are very light, easy to secure, inexpensive, and as natural looking as you can do on a low budget. Look for my other video which explains how I made these statues out of spray foam to create the frozen stone creatures created by the evil witch from The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. Thanks for watching. Favorite and follow.